The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday, November 25th. It's 2 days to Thanksgiving. Hope everybody's ready, and hopefully you've done your traveling so you don't get caught up in the travel craziness of the days just before and just after Thanksgiving, and hopefully you have friends, family that you're going to hang out with in Thanksgiving, and have a great time. So, yeah, we'll talk more about Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving, because there will be a show on Thanksgiving. It'll be a little earlier, I think an hour earlier in the day, maybe at 1 p.m. East Coast time, so we can finish it up in time for Thanksgiving dinner and get out there and do the Thanksgiving stuff. But there will be a show. All right, let's jump into the show. Let's jump into our the news for today, Tuesday, November 25th. All right, so once in a while, Trump does something that you think is good. And it turns out that what he does is suggestive of something good, is suggestive of what could be good, but he can't really do anything really good. It's just not in his nature because of the politics and because of the kind of influences that play upon him. So, for example, yesterday, Donald Trump signed an executive order that took a step towards, notice the language, took a step towards designating parts of, the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terror organization. Now, if implemented, this would impose, broad travel economic restrictions and allow for, basically it would declare the Muslim Brotherhood as an enemy of the United States. And that has massive implications. Think about it. The Muslim Brotherhood is the fountainhead, the mother organization, the parent organization of pretty much every Islamic terrorist organization out there. Hamas, it used to be the Muslim Brotherhood of Palestine. Hezbollah, while Shiite, cooperates very closely with the Muslim Brotherhood in Lebanon. The Muslim Brotherhood ultimately is behind the Islamic Jihad, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and so on. Indeed, one of the steps that George Bush should have taken after 9/11, one of the first steps he should have taken, is to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as an enemy of the United States. And what that would have done is also made it possible to look at chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood within the United States and declared them as part of the enemy. Would have made it possible for, without violating free speech, because the enemy does not have free speech, restricting who came into the country. It would have been a way to restrict immigration of Islamists. It would have been a way to restrict the preaching of certain imams in certain mosques that preach hatred of the West, hatred of America, all in the name of the Muslim Brotherhood agenda. It would have given the tools to actually confront the enemy not being a particular group, Al-Qaeda, the enemy being Islamism. But of course, you couldn't do that because Islam is a religion of peace, and God forbid you tie Islam to anything around 9/11. So Trump has taken a step towards doing this. But notice that it's a step. He hasn't actually designated them yet. Mainly, he's designated, he hasn't designated it, but even that partial step only applies to certain limited numbers of Muslim Brotherhood groups in Egypt, in Lebanon, and in Jordan. Jordan because they support Hamas, Lebanon because they support Hezbollah, and Egypt because basically the Muslim Brotherhood is opposed to Egypt's ruler, Sisi, continue to govern Egypt, and Sisi is an ally of the United States, and therefore an enemy of their enemy is their enemy. So what is lacking here? Lacking is a principled condemnation of Islamism. Lacking is a identification of the Muslim Brotherhood's role, not just in those three countries, but broadly as the umbrella organization for so much of bringing Islamism into the West and so much of the terrorism that comes with it. Lacking, in particular, is actually going after the Muslim Brotherhood where they are strongest, going after the Muslim Brotherhood where they are the most influential, going after the Muslim Brotherhood where they have the money to impact everything else. Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan barely, starts the process of going after the Muslim Brotherhood. And then note, why not just do a global thing? Why not just do a global definition of Muslim Brotherhoods as foreign terror organizations, wherever they may be, anywhere in the world? Why not do that? Who would that upset? Where is the Muslim Brotherhood strongest? Where does the Muslim Brotherhood get most of its support, both political and financial, from? Who would be upset if Trump actually went after the Muslim Brotherhood as a whole? Yeah, some of you get it. Well, you could start with Qatar. Certainly, Qatar is a beginning. And on this issue, I have to say, I fear saying this. It's worrisome to say this, and I don't know what's going on. But the reality is that some of the best posts on this particular thing were made by Laura Loomer. Ugh. This is what she wrote, and it's good. Trump actually didn't designate the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. He created a 75-day review process to consider designating chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood, and whoever drafted the executive order for the president did a terrible job because he didn't even include the two most important chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood, being Qatar and Turkey. Turkey, Erdogan, who he loves and who had a great relationship with, we had in the White House, who he joked around with. She continues, everyone with a brain knows Qatar funds the Muslim Brotherhood, and Erdogan in Turkey claims to be the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. Yet they are protected because the Qataris lobby their buddies in the White House to protect them from the executive order And of course, Trump loves Erdogan. He's one of those theocrats he likes. Anyone with even the slightest counterterrorism knowledge knows that the most problematic chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood are Qatar and Turkey. Terrorist to terrorist. You can't say, oh, this chapter is okay and this one isn't. Islamic Jihad is Islamic Jihad, and all the branches of Muslim Brotherhood make it clear, jihad is our way. It's literally their motto. The Muslim Brotherhood is already banned in Egypt and Jordan. It's a big deal. That's right. The executive order is nothing more than gaslighting. The language makes it very clear. She goes on and on and on, going after citing the executive order and going on, right? And while some, like Sebastian Gorka, are drooling over this, history's been made just a moment ago in the presence of the National Security Council colleague who helped author the executive order. President Trump designated multiple chapters, 3, of the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations, including Egyptian branch, remember, that is the branch that is already illegal, which is the propagator of modern jihadism, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Hamas included. All that true, but already illegal in Egypt. And the Muslim Brotherhood was founded in Egypt in the 1920s by Hassan el-Banna, B-A-N-N-A. Hassan el-Banna was the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it really was a primarily Egyptian phenomena for a long time. In the 1960s, the most prominent advocate of Muslim Brotherhoods, the most prominent intellectual of the Muslim Brotherhood was a guy named Said Qutb, who had spent some time in the U.S. and developed a passionate hatred of the United States, which animated much of his writing. He went to a church dance in the U.S. and saw, God forbid, women and men dancing together, and that flipped him out, and he writes about it repeatedly. In the 1960s, Gamal al-Nasser, the dictator of Egypt, hung Said Qutb in one of the many attempts to purge the Muslim Brotherhood from Egypt. But the Muslim Brotherhood remained strong. It was a spin-off from the Muslim Brotherhood that was responsible for the killing of Sadat in the early 1980s, 81, I think. And that wasn't just because, or primarily because he had signed a peace treaty with Israel. Muslim Brotherhood generally didn't care that much about Israel. It was because he was secular. It was because they viewed him as secularizing Egypt and moving Egypt towards a secular country, and they killed him for that. Since then, they've been banned and appeased, and went during the Arab Spring. If you remember the Arab Spring of the early 2010s, there was a free election in Egypt where the Muslim Brotherhood got to participate. And guess what happened? They won. And he actually had a Muslim Brotherhood president of Egypt for a few years. And then the Egyptian public realized, maybe we don't like this Muslim Brotherhood guy. And there was a coup, and the military took over. And since then, Sisi, who was the head of the military at the time, has become the ruler of Egypt. But yes, but of course, Muslim had splintered. Part of the globalization of the Muslim Brotherhood was that in the 1960s and 70s, in addition to hanging some of the Muslim Brotherhood, the rest were kicked out of Egypt, and they went primarily to Saudi Arabia, where they taught in the schools in Saudi Arabia, at the universities, at the madrasas. Indeed, Said Qutb's brother was a teacher in Saudi Arabia, and he was the teacher, or one of the teachers, of a young Osama bin Laden, when Osama bin Laden was studying at university in Saudi Arabia before he went to Afghanistan. And he inspired Osama bin Laden and many other Egyptians, any other Saudis, to adopt the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. And from there, it has just spread and spread and spread through educational institutions. The Saudis were very, very instrumental in spreading Muslim Brotherhood ideologies, primarily in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, until they decided they wanted to, I don't know, become more westernized and kick the Muslim Brotherhood out. And guess where the Muslim Brotherhood went when they got kicked out of Saudi Arabia and they couldn't go to Egypt, and where they have their center, where they have their main preachers, where they have their own radio shows, where they are intellectually, centered, headquartered. Qatar is the promoter of Muslim Brotherhood. And of course, we know that Trump has another bromance. He loves these bromances with the sheiks of Qatar, right? I mean, there's no way Trump is going to seriously confront the Muslim Brotherhood, because Qatar is the financier and the intellectual hub of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they gave him a Boeing 747 plated with gold. He's not gonna go after the people who gave him a Boeing 747 plated with gold. I mean, that just is not going to happen. You got to get your priorities straight. So the whole thing, even when you think, oh, Trump did something good, he designated Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, and you go, maybe not. Maybe that's not what happened. It's the weakest designation you could have. It has no relevance given that it does not apply to Qatar and, of course, Turkey. It's basically theater. It's political theater. It's to appease certain elements within the United States and maybe even within his base. But it doesn't do anything because, I mean, the Trump family has real investments in Qatar and Saudi Arabia and many other, and Turkey, and they want to be nice and friendly with the Turks. They don't want to go into in conflict with the Turks or the Qataris. And of course, don't forget, Qatar spends a huge amount of money in the United States, lobbying and engaging with administration officials. It just this administration is not going to go against Qatar and designating Muslim Brotherhood properly because it is impossible for them, just impossible. Yeah. Indeed, the Qataris have recently asked the Trump administration to release a senior Muslim Brotherhood terrorist from Egypt. So they want the Trump administration to put pressure on the Egyptians to release a senior, and I'm sure they'll do that. I'm sure they'll do that. Because Trump's relationship with Egypt and Trump's relationship with, I'll put it this way, Trump's relationship with Qatar is much more important than national security considerations. Much more important than the safety and security of the American public. Much more important than defeating terrorism in the world. His primary, I mean, he's got a relationship with Qatar and with Turkey and with these people. He's not gonna risk that in order to reduce terrorism for us. Not the kind of president Trump is, in spite of the fact that sometimes you guys want to believe he is. Anyway, I really tried to give you a story where I could say Trump did the right thing. And I couldn't. I couldn't, not because I couldn't emotionally or integrity-wise. I couldn't because he didn't do the right thing. He chickened out. He could have done the right thing. He was close to doing the right thing, and he chickened out because his priorities are completely, unequivocally upside down. Upside down. It's not America first. There is no American first agenda here at all. Zero, zilch, nada. You get more America first here on this show, on the Yaron Brook Show. The true, real, unequivocally real America First agenda is right here on the Yaron Brook Show. Not Nick Fuentes, not Donald Trump, not any of these guys. We here really care about America and advocate for policies that are good for America, like, I don't know, going after real terrorists, supporting our allies and going after our enemies, like capitalism, freedom, free speech. I mean, real issues that actually are America First issues, like the right, the government, limiting the government to protection of individual rights, life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness. That is an America First agenda. Maybe one day we'll have 2 to 3 million people following us. We will see. We will see. All right. Let's see. An update on what is happening with Ukraine. So, we talked about the Ukraine peace deal. And over the weekend, Witkoff and Rubio and the Driscoll, who is the Secretary of the Army, not Secretary of Defense or of War, but of the Army, were in Geneva negotiating with the Ukrainians. They've trimmed the 18-part plan to 19-part. And now they've sent the Secretary of the Army, this guy Driscoll, not sure what his qualifications are, but sent this, he went to school with J.D. Vance. They both went to Yale Law School around the same time. But I'm not sure and he served in the military and he's a smart guy. But he is now seems to be very involved in some of these negotiations. Anyway, he was sent today, or Monday, yesterday, to Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, to basically negotiate on behalf of the Trump administration with the Russians. So Ukrainians in Geneva, I'd rather go to Geneva than Abu Dhabi. Ukrainians in Geneva, and then Abu Dhabi with the Russians. And, there's some question about, what can be achieved and with the Russians. It really is hard to tell. Anything that you give the Ukrainians, and it sounds like they gave them quite a few things in Geneva, the Russians are going to poke at. The Russians want everything or nothing. And the plan proposed, the 28-point plan, was everything, pretty much. And the Russians still weren't 100% happy with it. So I just don't think there is a deal there on the table. I just don't think there's a deal on the table. I will say that there are many people within the Republican House and Senate that are so horrified by Trump's position in Ukraine that really view this as a betrayal and view this as America backtracking from any kind of principle, from any kind of legitimate position that it has, or any kind of leadership position it has in the world. There really seems to be horror among many Republicans, again, both in the Senate and the House, some even threatening to resign over this. At least a number of Republican congressmen, I think, are not going to run for re-election in 2026. I think you're going to see them kind of accepting the fact that the caucus generally, Republicans will probably lose, that the majority will shift to Democrats. The Democrats will spend their term mainly going after Trump and trying to impeach him. Why spend 2 years in the House basically doing nothing and being in the minority? Many of them are just pissed off at Trump administration for a variety of different things, including this Ukraine stuff. And it sounds like a lot of them are just not going to run. They're just going to, let some other Republican run. A lot of them are in safe Republican districts. It's not an issue of flipping. But why bother being a congressman if you're going to be in the minority, can't get anything done? And when you are in the majority, you're not getting anything done because Trump has a crazy agenda that is not consistent with your own. So, for example, Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska, appalled by the Trump administration's proposed peace plan to end Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He called it Witkoff's Ukrainian surrender plan, which is exactly what it is. So a lot of angst among Republicans who know something about foreign policy, who care about American foreign policy, who care about Americans' influence. They think it's a good thing, not an evil, bad thing. And are horrified by kind of Trump's complete and utter capitulation to Putin. Every single opportunity that he has, he completely and utterly capitulates to Putin. Neocons, says Don Bacon, is in a Democratic district in Nebraska. All right, all the more reason not to run, right? And where you might get beaten anyway by a Democrat, might as well retire now. But we will see. I mean, rumors are, and they're only rumors, and I have no insight, that a lot of Republicans in the House are thinking about retiring before the 2026 election. We will see. It won't be announced for a while now, probably in the new year, but we will see if that comes true. All right, something interesting happened last week with regard to China. For maybe the second time in American history, in the history of Chinese and American relations, Chinese premier called the U.S. president. Almost every conversation between China and America in the past has been at the initiative of an American president. Not just Trump, but this goes way back. And yet, last week, Xi called Trump. And the idea is, the call was about tariffs or trade or whatever. But, an analysis of what was actually discussed on the call shows that no, Xi was trying to send a clear message. A clear message to America and really to its ally, Japan. I mean, China is in a massive dispute right now. I think we talked about this yesterday with Japan about Taiwan. The new Japanese premier, the Iron Lady, as she's sometimes called, has basically in an address to Congress, this is Takaichi, basically in her address to Parliament, Japanese Parliament, mentioned the fact that Japan would definitely consider intervening if China invaded Taiwan. And this is after she had just been to China and had what appeared to be a pretty pleasant conversation with Xi and had a good meetings over there. But she mentioned this about a week or so ago, and China just blew a stack. As I told you, they boycotted air travel to Japan. They went into this whole nationalistic fervor. They're not buying seafood from Japan, and they are threatening the Japanese. And Japan, while trying to appease the Chinese, refuses to back down from its statement. Indeed, yesterday, as I think I mentioned, the Japanese have actually said that they were moving missiles close to Taiwan. There's a series of islands off the coast of Taiwan, kind of between Taiwan and Japan. If you look at a map, you can see them. Very close to Taiwan. But Japanese territory. And that China kind of has a claim on. China kind of thinks that those belong to it. And indeed, Takaichi said that when she visited China, that the Chinese have often explicitly told her that more than that, Okinawa, where there is a massive U.S. Navy base, Okinawa is merely lent to Japan temporarily. And that the Chinese will one day want that back, together with the Senkaku Islands. So it turns out that China has some territorial claims against Japan. And Japan views an invasion of Taiwan, an expression of those territorial claims, and a belief that if they can get away with invading Taiwan and taking Taiwan, they will next try to take the Japanese islands and maybe Okinawa. And indeed, beyond that, remember that China has a lot of justifiable gripes against the Japanese because of the way the Japanese treated them in World War II. The Japanese were like the Nazis of World War II. And she views this, or the Chinese might want retribution for what happened in World War II. So, I'm just checking out something here. 1 second. All right, not sure what that is. Okay. So, Japan has real worries, just like Europe has worries about Ukraine. Russia taking Ukraine and then wanting parts of Poland, certainly Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, the Baltics, maybe parts of Finland. No doubt that Russia would not stop at Ukraine if it could get away with it. And Japan is worried about China having the same intentions. Taiwan is step one, the islands is step two, Okinawa is step three. And just like China is doing with Taiwan, where it sends jets over the airspace, assuming it's their own airspace. They're now doing this with Japanese airspace. So on Monday, yesterday, fighter jets with the Japan Air Defense Forces were scrambled to intercept a Chinese high-altitude surveillance drone that had passed over Japanese airspace between Taiwan and Japanese islands. So you're seeing a real escalation. Anyway, what does this have to do with the phone call? Well, during this phone call, she wanted to paint a picture for Trump. Wanted to paint the picture of, we were allies in World War II. And he says part of the post-World War II reality has to be Taiwan becoming part of China. He says something like jointly that America and China must jointly maintain the World War II victory, the fruits of victory. And to do that, fruits of victory against fascism and militarism, which is a reference to Japan, and part of that is Taiwan. That's the World War II victory that he's talking about. So, she emphasized to Trump that, quote, Taiwan's return to China is an important component of the post-war international order. So China's basically telling the Americans, rein in the Japanese. Rein in the Japanese. They've gone off track. Taiwan is ours. It's just a matter of when, not if, we take it. We don't expect you to intervene. Don't let the Japanese get in the middle of this. Keep them out of this. She calls Trump for the first time ever to tell Trump, get the Japanese to back off. Now, he doesn't say it. This is kind of Chinese roundaboutism, right? But that's his intent. That is his intent. Of course, who does... And who knows? Now, Trump, of course, maybe played that he didn't get it. I had a very good telephone call with President Xi. He writes, we discussed many topics, including Ukraine, Russia, fentanyl, soybeans, and other farm products, etc. Notice Taiwan and Japan not mentioned. We have done a good and very important deal for our great farmers, and it will only get better. Our relationship with China is extremely strong. This call was a follow-up to a highly successful meeting in South Korea. Since then, there's been significant progress. And then he says, to that end, President Xi invited me to visit Beijing in April, which I accepted and I reciprocated, where he will be my guest for state visit in the United States later in the year. We agree that it is important to keep that we communicate often, which I look forward to doing. So again, Trump gushing over another bromance with another dictator, Xi of China, ignoring the whole Taiwan-Japan situation, ignoring what it means to the Japanese, and gushing over farming and stuff like that. And of course, as part of that, saying how wonderful it's going to be to go visit China. And by visiting China, of course, sanctioning the regime there and inviting the Chinese over here. For all of you people who thought Trump was going to be tough on China, who thought that? Tough. Trump is a wimp with dictatorships. A wimp. I mean, other than maybe the case can be made for Israel, Trump's foreign policy is just horrific and pro-dictators. So, yes, that was the meaning. Of course, Trump immediately called, or a day later, called a Japanese prime minister. One second. the Japanese minister, expressed support for her, but not clear what he exactly said. And did he tell her to back off a little bit? Did he tell her to moderate? Did he tell her to tone it down because he's got a good relationship going on with Xi and he doesn't want to distract that? What exactly did Trump tell the Japanese prime minister? Did he do what Xi wanted him to do? Takehachi herself said President Trump mentioned that he and I are extremely good friends and that I should call him anytime. But of course, she has an incentive to say that. She's not going to say Trump is pressuring me to back off. She would never do that. All right. Add Xi to another one of the dictators who have a friendly, positive, wonderful relationship with Trump. All right, Mamdani. So Mamdani is now appointing people for his, cabinet or whatever you call it when a mayor, his people who will actually act on his behalf when he becomes mayor on the 1st of January. I think he becomes mayor. A lot of people, of course, in New York in politics and the Republican side of politics are jockeying for position. He announced earlier today, I guess, or yesterday, that he was appointing one of the first appointment he made was a first deputy mayor. And here he chose a guy named Dean Fullerton. Now, Fullerton is a Democrat, a progressive, but what makes him, from Mamdani's perspective, I guess, a good choice, is that whereas Mamdani is 34 with no experience, this Dean guy is 74 years old, has been around the block for a long time, was a deputy mayor to Bill de Blasio, and was budget director for Bill de Blasio before that. So this is somebody who knows all the ins and outs of New York City Hall. So, again, trying to say, yeah, I know I'm young, I know I'm inexperienced, but I'm bringing in somebody more experienced. His chief of staff is L.A. Bisgard Church. Of course, she's been around him, and she's somebody who managed his campaign, and she will continue as chief of staff. So she's aligned intellectually, ideologically with him completely. She will run his life for the next few years. She is also a member of the Democratic Socialist of America, and she and what's his name, Fullenham's appointment were announced together. As Fullenham is like a throw to, I guess, Democrats generally, although he's pretty progressive and he served under de Blasio of all mayors. She is to indicate, no, I'm keeping my Democratic Socialist credentials. He did keep Jessica Tisch, as I told you, who is the police commissioner, that's a good one. That's one that is going to be good. So I think Mamdani is going to try to play it both ways, appear as an adult, but not give up on his progressive agenda. I hate to call it progressive because it's anti-progressive, like it's anti-progress agenda. And even his anti-progress agenda is a mixture of really, really dumb stuff like rent control and good stuff like really reducing regulations on new building codes. Now, we'll see if the latter actually gets passed, but he ran on that. He's also appointed a bunch of Jews, the token Jews, to his 400-member mayoral transition committee. I don't know. I mean, God, can you imagine appointing 400 people to your transition committee? Different committees, I guess. I mean, is it that complicated? 400 people? It seems bizarre. Anyway, he's got a rabbi and he's got all kind of the leftist Jews who voted for him. all the leftist Jews, some of whom are real anti-Zionists, who hate Israel, are part of this. So you know he can point to his token Jews and saying, "Yeah, see, I got some Jews, not a problem." By the way, Adams has a 700-member transition team, 17 committees. So I guess this is how it's done. And Adams has 16 rabbis on his transition team. I don't think that Mamdani has that many rabbis. I think Adams is beating him on the token Jew thing, on the rabbi thing. See, I love my Jews. See, I appointed some. Anyway, we will follow Mamdani and see what he actually does as compared to the rhetoric and everything else. All right, I mean, the stories about deportation continue to be horrific, continue to be just ridiculous. I mean, based on the latest data, I guess that's out there, ICE is not really focused on arresting criminals, certainly not violent criminals. Indeed, only 5% of people detained by ICE have had violent criminal convictions. 3/4 have no criminal convictions at all. And most, quote, criminals had immigration, traffic, or vice offenses. You know, these are not, to quote Trump, the worst of the worst. I mean, Trump just is lying about the worst of the worst. And, you know, they're mostly targeting people with no criminal record that are here illegally. Many of them are people that they're redetaining who are complying with the law and attending their court hearings. And they're nitpicking to find ways to get them out of the country. Clearly, the deportation scheme has nothing to do with crime, has nothing to do with criminals, has nothing to do with getting rid of gangs, and everything to do with fulfilling some ambiguous promise about getting rid of all the illegal immigrants and a general hostility, you know, towards immigrants generally, towards people who don't look like you. I mean, you know, here's an example. A Maryland mother from Vietnam, right, was deported. She's a mother of 4. She left Vietnam as a child. She has been in the United States legally. You know, she has been routine check-ins with immigration officials in Baltimore, doing them routinely. And she does have a theft conviction from decades ago, not yesterday, decades ago, in Virginia. So the Trump administration has rescinded her legal status and basically deported her to Vietnam, a place she hasn't been to since she was a little child, while her children in the United States. Her husband's still in the U.S., children are still in the U.S. I mean, ripping families apart. What is the goal? What is the purpose? I mean, imagine if anybody who's ever caught stealing is deported from the U.S., including citizens. Imagine if you deported from the U.S. people who stole, whose ancestors fought in the Civil War, heritage Americans. I wonder if any of them steal. Do you think any heritage Americans steal? Do you think that ever happens? No, heritage Americans would never steal. They have the right skin color. They don't, those people don't steal. It really is. I mean, I don't know how you guys are not just horrifically offended by the fact that this is our government doing this in our name. I'll give you another example. You have people who escaped Iran, Christians in this case, who escaped persecution in Iran, people who have converted to Christianity in Iran and considered apostates and are persecuted in Iran. Anyway, here's an example of a guy named Majid who fled Iran for the US in October 2024. After repeated detentions in Iran, torture, and he was involved in the women's protests against the hijab, the wearing the scarves. And he was also a convert to Christianity. He came here probably illegally trying to get asylum as a political prisoner. You would think that given the talk about the importance of Christianity and we need to save Christians around the world and we got to protect Christians around the world, an Iranian Christian being persecuted for Christianity would be at top of the administration's list of people to give asylum to. See, but he's not a white South African. Only white South Africans are getting an easy path to asylum. If you're brown, even if you're Christian, I mean, by that standard, Latin Americans are all Christian. You can't do that. Can't do that. So we lament the plight of Christians in all these countries, but then we let them rot. Anyway, Majid has been put on a plane and sent to Nicaragua. In Nicaragua, he was basically routed through Venezuela to Turkey with the idea of from Turkey he would be sent back to Iran. In Turkey, he managed to flee, and he's right now hiding in Istanbul, convinced that if he goes back to Iran, he will be imprisoned, tortured, maybe killed. The Trump administration doesn't care. We're not a place that accepts people just who are fleeing authoritarian regimes. We're not a place that respects freedom. Forget what's written on the Statue of Liberty. That's old hat. We haven't been that in a long time. We're certainly not going to start up with that again. I mean, there are other stories of our Iranian Christians who live in the United States and have been sent back to Iran, and who knows what their fate in Iran is going to be. It's just unbelievable. Just the disregard for human life, for individual rights that this administration's immigration policy has. It's just, I mean, when he said we're going to round them up and deport them, all right, we all kind of believed him, but, and I thought he was serious, but when you actually see, and one of the reasons I didn't vote for him and didn't support voting for him, but once you see what it actually looks like and how evil it is, should have made even a bigger deal out of it than before. All right, let's see. Okay, three last. We had another eight topic. You're getting a lot of news from me. A lot of news. Something new on X, Twitter. If you are on X, if you're on Twitter, I don't know how many of you are, but now when you click on somebody's profile, you can actually see where they are tweeting from. Right? So you click on their profile and it tells you this guy who's tweeting from Washington, D.C. that I clicked on. If I click on my profile, it says I'm tweeting from Puerto Rico. So everybody knows where I'm tweeting from, right? Where I'm tweeting from. Well, this is a new feature. We didn't know where people were tweeting from. And it has been a real revelation over the weekend. A real revelation over the weekend. Many of the accounts that support MAGA, for example, and, promote MAGA and repeat MAGA stuff over and over and over again and spread MAGA are based in places like Bangladesh. They have very American-sounding names, but they're based in Bangladesh or in, the Middle East, or in all kinds of godforsaken countries around the world. And these are accounts that have hundreds of thousands of people following them. And they, again, make it appear, and we're talking about tens of thousands of accounts, they make it appear like MAGA or any of these things are much bigger than they really are. Or, for example, many of the accounts that have been, especially pro-Muslim Brotherhood, pro-Hamas, pro-resistance, pro-Palestinians, many of whom made it sound like they were in Gaza, made it sound like they were real Palestinians. It turns out that many of these accounts are from Qatar, Turkey, Yemen, Pakistan, and other places around the world. Tajikin says on the chat, he says, BBC quoted a journalist as an eyewitness in Gaza. It turns out he was tweeting from Poland. And now you can see this. This is one of the really good innovations of Twitter recently, that you can actually see it. You can actually find it. And you can click on their profile and you can see exactly where they're from. And you can see all the fake accounts that are out there. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. So it turns out that a lot of the amplification of certain viewpoints, of certain perspectives, are basically psyop operations, misinformation, by probably accounts that are guided by Russian sources, Qatari sources, Chinese sources, who knows? But that are aimed at basically creating fake news, disinformation, and creating, just conflict within the United States, and appearing to the world as if certain viewpoints are much more popular than they really are. And Twitter has been particularly hurt by this. But now you can actually check an account. You can check and you can see, and people can point out, look at what's happening. Look at how bad it is. Yep. All right. So it's important to point out, and you can now check these things on a regular basis. You can check to see if any particular account that you see tweeting, you can see where they come from. All right, finally, or almost finally, on AI. There are going to be a lot of people opposed to AI. AI is going to be a massive disruptor of jobs. It's one of those technologies that really disrupt an economy. For the better, without any question. But they disrupt. They cause real angst among people. And they create real uncertainty. Challenges for people who are not sure about what their future is and what it's going to be. And you typically think about Luddites when it comes to these new technologies as belonging on the left. Labor unions who, like at the American ports, who don't want robots and mechanization. Or, I'm sure there are many people out there at Amazon, if Amazon was unionized, who would fighting the automation of their warehouses. But the reality is AI is going to be a massive economic disruptor. And it's going to force people to change jobs. And it is a disruptor because it is a massive increase in actual productivity. It is more efficient, in some cases at least, than human beings. And the left freaks out about technology like this. But what we forget is that so does the right. The right is really afraid of new technology. The right is very much dedicated to stagnation. They don't want to go forward. If anything, they want to go backwards. Middle Ages, we'll get to that in a minute. Now, Trump, to his credit, has basically eliminated most regulations on AI with the idea of building the largest, most powerful, most innovative AI ecosystem in the world. And he's got an AI czar at the White House who has a clear economic incentive to build out AI and dominate the AI space and go all in on AI. And indeed, AI right now is driving the Trump economy more than anything else. Everything else he's doing, I would argue, is trying to slow down the economy. But AI is the one thing that is growing it. But the reality is that MAGA doesn't like AI. If you listen to Stephen Bannon, who's like the oracle of MAGA, he hates AI. Bannon said, this is kind of funny, but this is what he said. I mean, you can laugh along with me. He said, I'm a capitalist. Really? That's about as much bullshit as it's like, Mamdani saying, I'm a capitalist. Or Elizabeth Warren saying, I'm a capitalist. Anyway, Bannon says, I'm a capitalist. This is not capitalism. This is corporatism and crony capitalism. He said that AI is likely the most dangerous technology in the history of mankind. He is horrified by things like self-driving cars. And he says, you have more restrictions on starting a nail salon in Capitol Hill or to have your hair braided than you have on the most dangerous technologies in human history. Now, maybe that's true. But then what we should do is eliminate the restrictions on starting a nail salon and on braiding hair. Right? History will know us for this, he said, even more than the age of Trump. The MAGA base will be known for this. So we've got to get it right. That is for AI and for killing AI. And this is widespread among MAGA. Again, Trump has David Sachs at the White House arguing for AI, but the MAGA crowd, the real MAGA crowd, who is really diabolically anti-capitalism, part of what they thrive on is fear. And AI is a wonderful vehicle for fear-mongering. He again writes, AI is probably the greatest crisis we face as a species right now. But it isn't being addressed with any urgency at all. This one is from Matt Walsh. This is Daily Wire Matt Walsh. We're just sleepwalking into our dystopian future. Tucker Carlson in October released a nearly 2-hour podcast that critically looked at the rise of AI, comparing it to the occult, and discussed how AI could lead to the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast. Senator Josh Hawley, a Missouri Republican, and Marsha Blackburn, a Republican from Tennessee, have emerged as prominent elected officials, this is from a news article, sounding alarm about AI, introducing legislation to restrict AI's use in critical decisions affecting Americans' lives. No AI in loan approval. No AI in medical diagnosis. Why exactly? Do you not want it in medical diagnosis? Are you worried for the jobs of radiologists? What exactly is the problem? I mean, how many lives could AI save if it got better at radiology than doctors? Really? Hardly argues that without aggressive intervention, AI will concentrate power in the hands of a few tech companies while decimating the working class. So typical Marxist arguments, right? Concentration of wealth. The wealthy will dominate. They will take over everything. They will own everything. They will have everything, and the poor working class will have nothing. It's all about the tech bros versus the working class. If ever there was a, basically a Marxist argument, this is it. And the right is completely embracing it. The technology is advancing without regulation. This is from Bannon, who claims he's a capitalist. That would hurt working people, many of which, he points out, are Trump supporters. It's going to be interesting to see how this evolves, whether Trump goes with MAGA or whether Trump goes with his tech bro supporters. They have the money, so he's likely to go with them. But who knows? Something AI does that's bad and suddenly everything could shift. There's a lot of talk, Bannon and MAGA, about transhumanism. Transhumanism. It's the war against humanity. And AI is leading the charge for transhumanism. Transhumanism is just a word to reflect the attempt to use science to better human beings, to make us better, smarter, stronger, live longer. That's what transhumanism is. They're really scared of it. Really scared of it. I mean, who knows what monsters these tech bros are going to create, what Frankensteins we're going to get out of the combination of AI, biotech, and all this other stuff. Scary stuff. Long term, they say, the AI is going to be in charge. Now, of course, sadly, Elon Musk fuels all of this with his doomsday scenarios. All right. Anyway, this is where we are. So we have a united front against AI. It'll be interesting to see what it leads to. Bannon has taken this on as a major issue. He is taking this to the base. He's speaking about it every opportunity. He believes that AI will do so much damage to the working class that will fracture MAGA and cost the Republicans the 2026 and 2028 election. It's good that they now have a scapegoat for losing those elections. God forbid that they would actually look in the mirror and say, oh, it's us. We're the reason we're losing the election. No, it's AI. All right, final story. This is an essay that was published today, or yesterday, but on Free Press, written by Steven Pinker and Marianne Tupy, T-U-P-Y. And I just want to highlight this essay. I mean, I'm trying to bring you some good intellectual stuff. Yesterday we got Gordon Wood. Today we get Steven Pinker, Marianne Tupy. Who knows who we'll get tomorrow, but good stuff. People are fighting. We're not alone in the fight against the monsters. We're not alone in the fight against the middle ageism of the right. Wood yesterday did a good job fighting against kind of heritage Americans, the idea that America is a people, genes, skin color, or anything like that. It is a creed. It is a set of ideas. Today we're going to talk about the idea that modernity is a problem, and that what we really should be striving towards is a return, how did Michael Knowles put it, to 1220. The title of this piece is the golden age of humanity? Question mark. We're living in it. Modernity is more meaningful and moral than medieval Christendom. And I like that they bring in morality. They don't quite know how to deal with the morality question, but they're on the right path. Put it that way, on the right path. They don't have the right answer. They need Iran. They desperately need Iran. But anyway, here's how the essay begins. I'll read you some sections out of it. This is also linked to the new book I've told you about, Christianity versus the West, that I am writing with Don Watkins. It's linked to a lot of the kind of things that I want to be working on in the next few years. I think I'm going to launch like 3 different types of Yaron Brook shows beyond, if you will, beyond the news. So either these will come at the end of a news show, there'll be elements of these. Maybe every show, we'll see. Or like the shows on Saturday will not be news, that'll be one of these 3. And the 3 topics, I really want to focus Yaron Brook shows that are not news on, but are also integrated into the news. 3 topics. Capitalism. So just more positives about capitalism. We talk a lot about the attacks on capitalism, but we need the positives. We need, what is capitalism? What is it about? What's its success? What has it done? What's it achieved? Where are examples of it? What's the history? So we'll start integrating more and more of those kind of things that I often do in my lectures into what we do here on the Yaron Brook Show. That's one. Second, what is the West? And here, you could add the evil of Christianity. So I plan on talking a lot more about the values of the West, the positives of the West, and how Christianity is completely incompatible with those. We could do a lot of shows just on that, right? Just different aspects of the West and the relationship with Christianity, from art to economics to politics to technology to attitudes towards sex and marriage and a whole bunch of stuff. Abortion, lots of it. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, I want to do a series of shows on the search for meaning. This idea that you can only find meaning outside of you, you can only find meaning in Christianity or in some force greater than yourself. I want to talk about what it means to have meaning, or in other words, to have purpose in your own life, and how you do that in a secular, rational, reason-based way. So this is our 2026 plan, is to really emphasize these 3 topics. Capitalism, the West, those are related, and meaning. Finding meaning. Meaning, in a sense, will be the new rules for life. Rules for life. And in this battle, people like Steven Pinker is definitely an ally, particularly when it comes to the West, and even for meaning, right? So he writes, would we be better off living in the Middle Ages? Astonishingly, influential voices on the American intellectual right now seem to think so. Rather than affirming the Enlightenment ideals that inspired this country's founding, reason, rights, markets, liberal democracy, and church-state separation, they're longing for, of all things, rule from the throne and the altar. Last month at Yale, the influential political blogger Curtis Yarvin, in a debate against Free Press contributor Jeb Rubenfeld, argued that America ought to, quote, end the democratic experiment and establish a monarchy. Yarvin has noted that Donald Trump is, quote, biologically suited, unquote, to be America's monarch. Now, the idea might sound extreme, but they have been influential. J.D. Vance describes Yarvin as a friend and has cited his work. And Yarvin is part of a family of movements known as the Dark Enlightenment, techno-authoritarianism, and neo-reaction that reject the entire family of Enlightenment values. Note, I would just add, that Yarvin is incredibly influential in Silicon Valley right now. He's one of the figures that people brought up in my debate about Christianity and they view him with great respect. Monarchy, with great respect. And he's influential on people like Andreessen and others, Peter Thiel and others are great admirers of the depth of Curtis Yarvin's thinking. I mean, unbelievably shallow and infantile, but we'll probably talk about that. I might have Nikos on to talk about that. Meanwhile, Pinker continues writing. Pinker and Marion continue. Meanwhile, theocracy is making a comeback. In movements known as theoconservatism, Christian nationalism, and national conservatism, the National Conservatism Statement of Principles, for example, declares that where a Christian majority exists, public life should be rooted in Christianity and its moral vision, which should be honored by the state and other institutions, both public and private. You see a statement like that, by the way, and you wonder why anti-Semitism is coming back. It's right there. The list of signatories is a lookbook of influential conservatives, including Charlie Kirk, Peter Thiel, Trump administration insiders Michael and Anton, and Russell Vought, as well as our fellow Free Press contributors, Christopher Rufo and Rod Dreher. The latter, a friend of the vice president, has said elsewhere that the West will not, quote, recover until and unless we become re-enchanted and seek a form of Christianity, and indeed of Judaism, that is more mystical, that valorizes this direct perception of the Holy Spirit, of holiness, and of transcendence. These are your modern conservatives, more mystical. And they say these ideas are not idle philosophical remunerations as they infiltrate the brain trust of the MAGA movement. They may serve to justify Donald Trump's vandalism of Enlightenment innovations. And, they go on quite a bit here. They critique another article that was published in the Free Press, which I will also critique in a future show. We'll cover that in a future show. But they go on. And then they spend a whole section of this essay, right? Knowledge is more meaningful than ignorance and superstition. And notice, knowledge is more meaningful. If you're going to search for meaning, if you're going to look for meaning, if you're going to aspire to meaning in your life, what you want is knowledge, not ignorance and superstition. And they critique here the idea of getting morality from old texts, from bizarre historical stories, from stories about snakes and Garden of Edens and Adam and Eve and forbidden fruits and commandments handed down on Mount Sinai to Moses. This is what, virgin births, there's another one. Resurrections. Divine providence, miracles. This is the source of morality? I mean, that should be a joke, and I think they then try to establish that you can have a secular morality, a reason-based morality. They don't do as good of a job as Ayn Rand does in that, but they're at least trying. They're making an effort. Sadly, they adopt much of the altruism of Christianity. The next section in their essay is called Pre-Modern Christendom. Was not moral, but barbaric. Yay. They write, in contrast to Enlightenment's exaltation of universal well-being, the morality of Holy Scriptures was dubious at best. The God of the Old Testament prescribes the death penalty for blasphemy, adultery, homosexuality, idolatry, disobedience, and working on the Sabbath, while finding nothing particularly wrong with slavery, rape, torture, mutilation, and genocide. Indeed, as I've often said on the show, God commanded the Israelites to commit all these against their enemies. Whatever humane advances we might attribute to Jesus, his followers did not adopt them for an awfully long time. For some 1,400 years that separated Constantine's embrace of Christianity in the early 4th century to the rise of the Enlightenment in the 18th, most Christians remained untroubled by slavery, the persecution of heretics, the brutal colonial conquests. I mean, according to historian Matthew White, he estimates that 47 million people have been killed over religious beliefs by Christianity, not counting Islam. The Crusades in Holy Land, for instance, killed 3 million. The Albigensian Crusade, 1 million. The Huguenot Wars, this is Catholic French killing Protestant French, 2 to 4 million. 2 to 4 million. And of course, the 30-Year War, triggered by the Reformation, 7.5 million people, when the population was much, much smaller. Barbarism was also carried out at smaller scales. Before the Enlightenment, the standard judicial method for fact-finding and punishment was torture. Hundreds of non-lethal crimes were punishable by death. The executions carried out in public with public entertainment were engineered to be protracted and as painful as possible, including breaking on the wheel, burning at the stake, impalement, dismemberment, and disembowelment. Disembowelment is the worst of all of this. These orgies of sadism did not deter civilians from killing each other in large numbers. Homicide rates, this is good, homicide rates, in 14th century European countries averaged around 40 per 100,000 per year. Today's rates are closer to 1 per 100,000. That's a huge achievement. And of course, health and prosperity. He says health and prosperity are more meaningful. I love the way that he uses meaningful. Meaning, searching for meaning. Well, health and prosperity are more meaningful than starvation and squalor. Westerners have been complaining about how wealth causes moral decline for millennia. Few of the complaints have reflected on how complainers have reflected on how it was wealth that gave them the luxury to complain about that wealth. Contemporaries who died in childbirth or whose lives were raked by hunger, pain, and disease were not as lucky. The vanquishing of early death, propelled not by prayer, but knowledge, may be humanity's greatest moral triumph. I mean, he goes through the life expectancy numbers, child mortality numbers, all of that, which is just amazing, right? I mean, in 1800, European life expectancy was 33. Today it's 79. Before the turn of the 20th century, a third to half of European children died before their 5th birthday. Today, it's 0.3%. I mean, in those days, children who survived faced orphanhood, hunger, parasites, workhouses and beatings, famines, killed huge numbers of population as does disease, malaria, tuberculosis, smallpox, cholera. It's human ingenuity, largely in the form of vaccines and sanitation, has decimated ancient scourges, including measles, malaria, polio, rubella, and others. Basically, 2 diseases, smallpox and rinderpest, have been wiped off the face of the earth because of vaccination. And finally, he said, they talk about anti-Semitism and how pre-modern Christianity was anti-Semitic. And then modernity is not a ruin. And he says that the 21st century, with all its woes, is a better time to be alive than any time before. Extreme poverty, child and maternity mortality, illiteracy, tyranny, violent crime, and war deaths are lower than in any previous century. The wealth that the theo-conservatives find so coercive funds the education and leisure that allows individuals to contemplate meaning, right? I mean, how are you going to contemplate meaning when you're a subsistent farmer? Whether that meaning be found in work, family, community, nature, science, sport, art, and yes, religion. Right? Another gift of modernity is that people are not burned alive for their beliefs, but allowed to hold whatever ones they find meaningful. That's another. It's so, I mean, this is all amazing, right? It's sometimes claimed that for all these opportunities, people today are suffering from a new crisis of meaning. Here again, we shouldn't confuse nostalgia with facts. Illiterate, this is great, right? Illiterate medieval peasants left us with no records of how meaningful they thought their lives were. As the historian Eleanor Jenga points out, they themselves thought they were living in a time of decline. They were rebelling constantly. Right? Every generation believes that it stands amid ruins of a better era. Nostalgics have fallen for this illusion, weaving a fantasy of civilizational decline from Edenic bliss. All available evidence shows the opposite. The early stages of our civilization were stained by ignorance, superstition, sickened cruelty, grinding poverty, and early death. From those rude beginnings, the heirs of the Enlightenment deployed knowledge and sympathy to claw increments of progress from an indifferent universe. Wise people should cherish these accomplishments and ensure that we don't squander them based on figments from a make-believe golden age. All right, 2 thumbs up, 3 cheers to Stephen Pika. I mean, almost 3 cheers. That is great. We need much more of that. Whatever errors, mistakes that are made in that essay are trivial as compared to the truth that he is illuminating and the shared enemy that we have, which is the Middle Age, the people who crave for the Middle Ages, who strive for Middle Ages, who have a Middle Ages mentality. So good for Stephen Pika. We need more allies like that. And we'll be doing more of this, talking about the past. We'll do more history. We're going to do more celebrating successes of the present and successes of capitalism more broadly. But I really want to give you a sense, at least my audience knows how awful the past was and knows how good they have it today. It's way too depressing to listen to the news and think that is essentially what life is today. But that's not essentially what life is today. Screw Trump. Screw all these people. The reality is that you have a pretty good life. Now, there are people trying to make it worse, and we should fight them. But if we only focus on the fact that they're trying to make it worse, we lose. We lose, a connection to how good our life is right now and how good we can make it. And that is so important, so essential, so crucial to living with that capital L. Remember, living with a capital L? We will talk more about that. All right. Let me remind you of a few of our sponsors. Hendershot Wealth has a product that can reduce your capital gains liability significantly. You can find a really interesting interview I did with Robert Hendershot on that on my playlist in YouTube. So go to YouTube, search my playlist. It's under sponsors. You will enjoy the interview, so it's worth listening to, whether you have capital gains liability or not. Check it out. Yes, it is. So let me I'm thinking what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, we're good. All right. And then we've got ARI, which is reminding you of the ARI conference in Porto, Portugal. Beautiful place. I will be there. Talsfani will be there. Ankar will be there. Ben, Bear, and Nikos. And we'll be spending the weekend with you. And you can come, and adults can get a discount. YBS, what is it? No, 26 YBS 10. 26 YBS 10. You can get a 10% discount. Anybody under 34, the age of 34, can get a scholarship. All you need to do is apply. So go to aynrand.org/start here, and you can get all the information you need about it. Alex Epstein is the leading authority on all things climate change, power, electricity, fossil fuels, nuclear. You got to follow him. You got to get his talking points. Alex Epstein. alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com to get all of that. And yeah, go for it, sign up and educate yourself, become a much better communicator. Reminder, I'm looking for 9 people to sign up for Patreon over the next 5 weeks. Patreon, as monthly supporters on Patreon. At whatever level you can. $10 or more gets a free feed of my podcast. A free feed of my podcast with no ads. No ads. All right, David, we're going to the Super Chats. We are $65 short of our 2-hour goal. And you should think beyond that, because we're going to go, given the number of questions, probably into the 3rd hour. So let's try and get beyond that. But certainly 65. David says, $50. Thank you, David. What is your opinion on modern economists Yaron Varoufakis and Tyler Cowen? Would you recommend reading their work? No and yes. So Yaron Varoufakis is not worth reading. He's a hack. He is a neo-Marxist. He's a bad economist. Very, very, very left-wing. Very, very Marxist, and just not worth engaging with, because I don't think his work is worth anything. I've tried to debate him. He refuses to debate me. On the other hand, Tyler Cowen is good. He's not objectivist good. He's not laissez-faire capitalism 100% good, but he's good. He's often got original thoughts. He often approaches economics in an interesting way. He's a clear thinker. And generally, I encourage you to read Tyler Cowen, follow his stuff, subscribe to his podcast and his blog. I mean, Tyler, heavily influenced by Austrian economics, but doesn't consider himself an Austrian. He's more eclectic, but certainly a free marketer, even if not 100% laissez-faire capitalism. So yes, Tyler Cowen, definitely. David also asks, so rich to see the chickens coming home to roost with Trump supporters trying to distance themselves from neo-Nazis. People like Niall Ferguson, Victor Davis Hanson, Ben Shapiro, Richard Hanania. Yes, I think that's absolutely right. Richard Hanania is the best of them, because I think he's been very critical of Trump even before all this. But absolutely, I gave a rant yesterday about this. The national conservatives, the Yoram Chazonis, who basically set the stage for the anti-Semites, set the stage for the Nick Fuenteses and the Tucker Carlsons through their nationalistic conservative views and the emphasis on religion and the emphasis on nationalism. The inevitable consequence of that was anti-Semitism. And they made it possible, and now they're complaining about it. Now they're horrified by it. Now they're upset about it. And Trump is the carrier. Trump makes it all possible. Trump opens the barnyard door wide open for the worst of the worst, and has been doing so since his first term. And I will return to Charlottesville, because Charlottesville was one of the first places where he gave them a wink and a nod. I mean, he did it also when he came down the escalator in 2015 and started slamming Hispanic judges and calling Hispanic immigrants into the United States rapists. So elevating that kind of racist language and articulating that was what Trump did. And he basically created massive space on the right for the worst, racist, anti-Semitic, fascist types. He made it all possible, and he's been making it possible since he came on the political scene. And it's one of the things that makes him as bad as he really is. But yes, chickens have come home to roost. And a lot of these people supported Trump, who supported the ideas that are making these anti-Semites possible. They're now in fear mode. They're now struggling. Well, to a large extent, it's their fault. Also, David, how is Japan able to avoid hyperinflation? The debt is now 2.5 times GDP, and the new PM is issuing new debt for hundreds of billions. I think it's basically because they are very cautious about monetizing that debt. They have not been aggressive about turning that debt into money in the hands of consumers. And even then, when money flows to people, the Japanese tend to take that money and put it into government debt. So there's like this constant flow. And it doesn't go into consumption. It doesn't go into driving prices up. It basically guarantees stagnation, because instead of the money flowing into investment and into increased productivity, which would increase incomes, which would increase the well-being of people, and therefore they'd feel more comfortable about spending more, it goes back into government debt as a major form of Japanese public savings. And that just feeds stagnation. There's no investment, there's no growth, there's no real GDP growth or any kind of real growth. And they keep doing this. They keep stimulating the economy with that. But that just, you're sucking money out of the economy with one hand, taking on the debt, and you're spending that money. It has no impact. It does nothing. And you keep the spinning around. And look, for whatever reason, the Japanese public believes that they will get their money back, that Japan will find a way without inflation, because it hasn't inflated today. I mean, without inflation, without monetary inflation, without price inflation, sorry, because it hasn't to date. They will find a way to repay that debt without that. Now, how they'll do that, nobody knows. And this current prime minister is just as bad as the previous in terms of this. Andrew, Rand said it's always important for an artist to know what feelings motivate him. That suggests that in choosing a career, the selfish guiding question should be, what do I like to do? And then check if it's rational. Is that the essential process? Yeah, I think that's right. What am I passionate about? What I love doing, what I like, and then is it rational? Is this career value creating? Should I feel good about it? No, it turns out I really get passionate when I cheat people out of their money. That's not good. That's not productive. That'll lead to a destructive life. Yeah, I shouldn't do that. I need to question my feelings. I should go see an analyst, a therapist. So you've got to, you start with, what gets you excited, what's passionate, assuming you're healthy, and assuming you're generally a rational person, and then ask the question, is this rational? Is it right? How does it fit into my moral values? Is it consistent with those values? Is it consistent with how I think human life should be lived philosophically, intellectually? All right, Andrew also. I think it's important for objectivists to integrate the independence of rationality, not just the morality of rationality, but the individualism involved. A collectivist may not know that he can think on his own, no less how. Yeah, I mean, look, independence is one of the 7 virtues in objectivism. And what does independence mean in objectivism? Not living on a desert island. Absolutely not. It means it really means thinking for yourself. And what does thinking for yourself mean? It just means being rational. Nobody can be rational for you. Nobody can think for you. So what independence really means is think. Don't be swayed by other people. Don't go with the crowd. Think. Make knowledge your own. Make decisions based on your own mind, your own reason, your own rationality. That's essentially, what independence means. You have a mind, use it. And of course, only you can use it. Nobody else can use it. It's not part of a network. It's alone. It can get information from other people and other sources like books, but it can't think for you. Nobody can think for you. Nobody can actually do the calculation, the integration, the induction, the thinking part, the logic. Nobody can do that for you. Zero. Tajikin, thank you from Norway. Hi, Yaron. I got a bone to pick with you, Objectivists. It has to do with regulations. AFAIK Objectivists, I don't know who those are, seem to be 100% against regulations. However, it doesn't make sense to me. I think that's mainly your problem. I think this is part two. In a free society, should my neighbor be allowed to run a small nuclear power plant from the garage? Does it not need to be objective regulation measured in risk? Such regulation seem a necessary form of self-defense. So, I mean, if you want to, you can call it regulation if you want. But regulation is typically preemptive. Now, in a world of completely safe nuclear power plants, why is it a problem? Now, if there is some knowledge that nuclear power plants might be unsafe, they might emit radiation, they might blow up, which is, by the way, not really the case, but let's assume that was the case. Then you have every right, if your neighbor is building a nuclear power plant, to call the police and say, look, what he's doing is very risky. I fear that it's going to infringe on my rights. And then the police, and maybe this is some division of the police which is in charge of safety, would inspect the nuclear power plant that your neighbor has and make sure that it's of the type and the kind that is not unsafe, that does not pose a risk to you. But notice here that the violation of rights here, you only have a right to stop your neighbor from doing something if there is an objective risk that you can identify that his activity is imposing on you. And here, the very fact that he's building a nuclear power plant, we have enough knowledge about the risks involved in nuclear power plants that we identify that as a real risk to me, and therefore, into my property, and therefore, yeah, I want somebody to inspect it. I want somebody to review it. It's not that he needs a permit. That's if he's building something like this, I, as his neighbor, have the right to make sure that it doesn't pose a threat to me. But I have to have some indication. I have to know that there's construction going on over there, and it seems to involve materials that are not kosher, not okay. So, for example, you don't need building permits. But if I'm walking down the street and I see a building and there's a crane, and the crane is like really tilted and it looks like it might fall, I would call up the relevant policing agency and say, there's a risk to the public here. There's a risk to other people's property. Come and inspect it and see. So the crane would not need a permit, a preemptive approval. But if it exhibited risky behavior, it would need to be inspected. So you'd have to have a reasonable suspicion of risk to allow somebody to inspect your neighbor's crane, your neighbor's nuclear power plant, your neighbor's whatever it happens to be. Paul, how can you expect to convince the American people of the evil of Trump's policies? Have you ever tried to convince some alleged objectivists of this evil? I'm not trying, right? We're not trying to convince the American people of Trump's evil. We're trying to get people to think about, what is going on in their lives and in the world. And maybe to get a few of them to go, what he's saying about Trump kind of seems right. I voted for him, but he's doing this horrible stuff. What is this guy, where's this coming from? How come he saw it before I did? Or why is his analysis so interesting? And then get them to, listen to more and then read a book and read Ayn Rand. And I mean, we're not talking about a mass movement here. I have no I mean, I have no illusions about reaching millions of people and changing them and starting. I mean, that's just not going to happen. What we're talking about is individuals, maybe dozens, maybe hundreds, who are, curious about what we say about Trump, and therefore shift their position or inquire or search more. And look, the people who are exposed to objectivism thoroughly and then become passionate supporters of Trump and defenders of Trump and what I call apologists for Trump. Okay, they've had their chance. They've been exposed to objectivism, and they didn't, and something's wrong there, in my view, in their analysis. But my goal is not them. I don't care about them, and I don't care about people who are always going to be committed to Trump. I care about the people who are willing to think and are willing to be challenged and are willing to change their mind and are willing to investigate and seek deeper truths, seek philosophical knowledge about what is going on in the world. David says, any thoughts on Viktor Frankl's search for meaning through logotherapy? I read Viktor Frankl a long, long time ago. I probably need to read him again, because if I'm going to do something on meaning, that seems to be such an important book in the regard. I wasn't particularly positive about whatever I read back then. I can't remember the details, but it wasn't about finding meaning in a rational, positive sense. And of course, the context of Viktor Frankl is in a concentration camp. And it's not clear you can find meaning in a concentration camp. It's not clear you should find meaning then. I mean, it boils down to life and the value of life. And it's not clear that you can find value to life in a concentration camp. But maybe the hope that in the future you will find. It's very existentialist. Yeah, it's Camus and Sartre, and life sucks generally, and you've gotta and I get it if you're in a concentration camp. But I think we need to look elsewhere if we really want meaning. And I'll be talking more about that over time. All right, we are $36 short of our goal for the second hour, and it'd be good to get into the third hour. So anybody have additional questions, jump in. Frankl says having purpose in life creates meaning. I think that's right. That's fundamentally right. But you need to be clear about not any purpose. So I would rephrase that as saying having a rational purpose, a purpose that helps build self-esteem, that creates meaning. That is what creates meaning. So I think the rational and the self-esteem need to be there. Normative Randroid, thank you for the sticker. And Andrew, I think the two of you basically put us over the second hour target, so I appreciate that. Normative Randroid also did another sticker earlier, so thank you for that. And so did Avilesk. And who else? Who else did stickers? Roland, thank you. And Jeff Bannister, thank you. So thank you guys for the sticker. And I think we got us all started with Catherine and with Kate Demeter. Thank you guys for the stickers. And there's another one from Exit1254. All right, Andrew, will you please spend some time arguing for morality of pride contra Christian doctrine? I did a whole show on this in my Rules for Life, and I certainly will do a whole show on it in the future as I discuss meaning, Christianity, the West, all of those things. So I think to find meaning, you have to have pride. And pride is something that Christianity denounces. It's a sin. I think I did a show on the Christian deadly sins. Pride is the idea that one should strive for moral perfection. One should strive to be good. One should strive to be virtuous. In other words, one should strive to be rational. One should try to be rational in all aspects of one's life. It is something to be proud of. It is that you take your character seriously, that you take morality seriously. And it is a massive builder of self-esteem. I am rational. I take my life seriously. I'm going to be a good guy. I am a good guy. Versus Christianity, where pride is a sin. Because how dare you think you can be good? How dare you think you deserve self-esteem? How dare you think you can be morally perfect or achieve morality? Christianity looks down on it because it's selfish, because it's self-confident, because it's a reflection and a prerequisite for self-esteem. And Christianity doesn't want you to have self-esteem. It wants you to grovel. It wants you on your knees. It wants you to recognize that you're a sinful, low, meaningless nothing in the universe, and that everything is God. They might not say it that way, particularly not the, some Protestant preachers. But that's what Christianity really means. It's a religion for your knees, not for standing up tall. Now, it changes over time. So, it's about guilt of original sin. It's about shame of sex and your own body. It's the opposite of pride. It's the opposite of taking your life seriously. Taking your life seriously is self-interested. Stop doing that, says Christianity. The only purpose of your life is to serve God, serve your neighbor, and by that, serving God. Andrew, I know it's painful to pay attention to politics sometimes, but a rational, self-interested, responsible individual should still do it, correct? I mean, yeah, up to a point, not too much. Don't obsess. You got to know what's going on in the world. And when the time comes, you might have to act on that knowledge, like in elections. But generally, don't spend too much time on it. Certainly don't obsess about it. And don't let it get to you. Focus on your life and living it and making the most of it. Lincoln, immigration crime is a classic power law example. Most of the crime from a small percentage of top offenders. This is true for most crime. Yeah, most crime is done by a very small number of people. And if you could identify those people and ultimately convict and try and convict and imprison those people, crime plummets. And when incarceration rates go up in the United States, when the police are serious about catching criminals and the justice system is serious about putting them away, crime declines. Crime declines. Andrew, if conspiracy theorists spend half the amount of energy and time that they spend trying to uncover lies on seeking truth, there'd be a lot more knowledge in the world, and they'd be a lot less scared. Yes. Their fear comes from the lack of knowledge. Their fear comes from the world being unintelligible to them. Mysterious forces out there. The more knowledge you have, the more understandable the world becomes, the less afraid you are of it. Daniel says, recently divorced mother of two with Danielle, with 4.5 Bitcoin and 107K in cash. What advice would you have for her portfolio or ways to think about her portfolio? God, I would sell the Bitcoin. 4.5 Bitcoins, that's a lot of money. I mean, that's It was more. It was $450,000 not that long ago. It's a little bit less than that right now. But yeah, I would sell the Bitcoins, opportunistically if you want to sell them all at once or sell them over time. Hopefully Bitcoin goes up so you can sell it while it goes up. And then take the cash, and I would take the cash and keep a few months worth of expenses on hand, right, in cash, and the rest together with what you get from the Bitcoin, diversify. But if this is all your assets, then definitely don't have it all in Bitcoin. I mean, you've got to diversify and diversify extensively. Diversify both in US and across the globe. The more risk averse you are, the more worried you are, the more put into bonds and the less into stocks. But generally a mixture of stocks and bonds in a global portfolio, and do it with very low expenses, index funds. And I should note that nothing of what I said should count as investment advice. It's just, my opinions. I have to watch the SEC. All right, Danielle also says, is it too late to buy into the Argentinian stock market? I don't think so. I mean, a lot of the success of Milei is priced, but I think there's a lot of upside still if he actually executes on everything, and then if he gets reelected in 2 years. So I think there's definitely upside. All right, we've got somebody who knows exactly when the next rally point in Bitcoin is going to be. Don't follow his advice because nobody knows. Anybody who claims to know that is, in my view, not to offend anybody, delusional. You can't know these things. If you could predict the markets, you would be a trillionaire. Not a billionaire, a trillionaire. If you could time markets, you would be a trillionaire. Andrew, thanks for sparking righteous indignation and covering the story about MAGA versus tech bros. The demonization of the tech bros, who are the modern atlases, is a deeply serious injustice. Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, they have bad ideas and they play into this. But yeah, they are the good guys, and ultimately the ones building modern society and advancing us and pulling us forward in spite of ourselves. Yeah. Thought Criminal wants tips for objective soul building. That you're going to have to wait until shows where I discuss that. I would refer you to my Rules for Life series. You can get like 22. There are 22 shows that I did on Rules for Life, and they have a lot of tips for soul building. I mean, soul building basically is integrating your values, creating a value hierarchy, making sure all your values are consistent with your moral values, understanding your moral values and integrating them into every aspect of your life, and making sure all your other values are integrated with them. So it's a constant process of learning and integrating and introspecting what are my values? What do I care about? What is good for me? And that's how you build a soul. And most of that is about character. So most of that is about moral values. Why am I honest? What is the value of honesty? Why should I pursue honesty? What's good about it? Integrity. Should I be courageous? What does courage even mean? How do I do that in the world in which we live? Why is it rational? Those are the kind of questions you have to constantly ask yourself and constantly think about, solve, and constantly keep coming back to it and integrating it into your other values. Daniel, in London, is London still worth visiting, or did Islamists spoil it? Oh no, it's definitely worth visiting. God, don't let the fearmongers out there destroy your capacity to enjoy the good in life. London is a beautiful, magnificent, amazing city. There's certain areas of London you shouldn't go to. They're not hard to identify. But there's so much good in London. It's such a beautiful city. There's so much interesting stuff there. Neighborhoods that are different. It's a vibrant place. There's so much arts and music and great restaurants and all of that. Don't go to the Muslim parts of town. So the fact that there's Muslim immigration into Europe should not, capital N, should not discourage you from going to Europe. That's ridiculous. I mean, the Muslims are still a small minority in Europe, and Europe has much to offer you. Think about your life. Stop living in fear. And don't listen to the fear-mongers, the stupid fear-mongers who would have you stay at home under your blanket reading the Bible instead of living your life out there in the world. Lincoln, the 1950s obsession the right has is based on a false view of the past, but is understandable if one was ignorant about economics. 1220 conservatism really shows the right as anti-Western civilization. I think the 50s is the same thing. You don't need to know economics. You just need to know a little bit about history to see that it's complete nonsense. And you have to have a deep lack of appreciation for the world you live in and the values you have. We all know houses are smaller. You didn't have iPhone. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have Netflix. You didn't have really a color TV. You didn't have any of this stuff. It's all of that is really cool. And you had Jim Crow laws in the South, and women were treated like second-class citizens. And I mean, it was awful. And gays had to hide and were often beaten and sometimes imprisoned. And if you said the F word on stage, you spent the night in jail or worse. There's so many ways that life today is better than the 50s. And it doesn't take economics to know that. Jason, a two-part question. 60 Minutes inside Montana's fight to block sale of federally owned land. 11/23/2025. Mountains are themselves as stewards of the land, not owners. Montanans are themselves as stewards of the land, not owners. Left and right, cowboy and green. What's going on today with my, with my mouse? Huh. All right. Left and right, cowboys and green econs unite to stop any sale, fearing a slippery slope and loss of heritage. No one asks how privatization would work. Yeah, I mean, this is the sense in which I said the environment is something both left and right, really are passionate about and are willing to sacrifice private property easily for. And they all, left and right, have this idea of somehow the land being sacred, the land being godlike, and not being allowed to touch it, and private property being a violation of the land, because you can't own land. God didn't give you the Garden of Eden to own. He gave you the Garden of Eden to take care of. Suneric, something like that. Fantastic, you'll be doing shows on capitalism, Christian mysticism, and meaning. Absolutely. Is there Christian non-mysticism? I think it's all Christian mysticism. Linda, looking forward to the new additions to the show. Thank you, Linda. Well, we started today with Pinka. Esaku fan. After interviewing you the other day, Stitch and Adam said that Andrew Jackson's abolition of the Second Bank of the United States contributed greatly to a depression in 1837. Can you comment on this? Is he right? Thanks. I don't know. I mean, I doubt it, but I don't know the history well enough, and I don't know the depression of 1837 well enough to have an opinion. You might look at the work of Selgin and White. They have kind of banking history going back to that era. I just don't remember. So no, I don't know. Unlikely, put it that way. When you get to my $5 question below, I'm just pointing out how right you are on cultural trends and thoughts You might find it interesting. If you want to comment on it, maybe there's better sources. Okay, what is this? What's Jason referring to? I don't know what he's referring to. I don't understand, Jason. All right, Andrew, is there selfishness in being kind to others? I realize to be exact, one would need context, but I mean being kind is a default rule. Yes, absolutely, it's selfish. You live in a benevolent world. You live in a world of where other people are of value to you. You want to live in a world of smiles and benevolence across the board. And one of the ways you create that kind of world is you model that behavior. You behave in that way. You treat other people that way. And that contributes to making a world that is benevolent, friendly, kind, nice, unless you have reason to stop it. And yes, you have reason not to do it. So absolutely, it's a part of selfishness, to the extent that other people are value to you. Right? SAQU fan 11. I'm a hunter. If I own property, should I be able to shoot any wild game that comes onto my property? Or do other people who want to conserve wildlife have the right to stop me? What should the law be? It's your property. You have a right to kill any wildlife that comes onto your property. If other people value wildlife, then they can buy property and fence in that wildlife onto their property. This happens in Africa. The best way to preserve elephants, the best way to preserve lions and I think rhinoceroses is to privatize them. Privatize them. Privatize them by, making the elephant part of your private property, making the animals who live on your land yours, and now you have an incentive to keep them or to issue hunting licenses to people who want to hunt them, but you need more of them to be able to benefit from the hunting licenses, so you make sure that hunting is restricted and so on. But yes, absolutely, you have every right to, you have every ability or have every right to do that if the animal's on your private property. Now, again, those who want to preserve it can buy the property from you, can try to convince you not to hunt them, can establish a animal preserve on their land, can set up a big national park, privately owned, where these animals can roam. But once it's on your property, animals don't have rights. So you definitely have a right to kill them. Whether it's moral, whether it's healthy, whether it's good is a different question, but it's certainly politically permissible. Lincoln, why do you think art and music have been on a gradual decline in quality over the past decades? I get moral decay plays a factor, but with painting falling off 100 years ago, some other factors exist. Yeah, philosophy. Ayn Rand describes this process in the Romantic Manifesto. If painting, for example, reflects an artist's deep metaphysical value judgments and his way of seeing the world, he recreates the way he sees the world, then as his epistemology decline, as he's convinced the world that he sees doesn't really exist in that form, as the world becomes more disintegrated in his mind, that is reflected in his painting. When the world loses all meaning, then his painting loses all meanings. So it's a general decline of philosophy. It's philosophical ideas that are embraced by artists. As they decline, their art declines with it. Now, that deserves a whole show. We'll do that at some point. I think if you go watch my lecture on modern arts, I cover some of that there. Lincoln, something like 80% of all crime happens from people with 3 or more prior arrests. This is why 3 strikes laws were so effective. Yeah, I'm not surprised, and I don't object to 3 strikes if the strikes are really real crimes, not, I don't know, possession of marijuana or something like that, but real, particularly violent crimes, then throw away the keys. Are you okay with UBI under some context? in the context of getting rid of every other aspect of the welfare state, and with the idea of a transition towards no welfare at all, yes. This is universal basic income. So it would have to be that it replaces every single other welfare program that exists at the federal, state, local level, and that it is ultimately a way to long-term phase out welfare completely. That's the context. Lincoln, Musk could be a real-life John Galt if he wasn't such a Duma and Trump supporter. Well, Duma and Trump supporter are just manifestations of a certain subjectivism that is part of Elon Musk's soul. That's part of who he is, part of philosophy he's integrated into his life, sadly. He's too emotional and he's too subjectivist. All right, Lincoln says, I recommend all college students do a summer in Europe. So much history to explore, and you can stay in cheap hostels and get a 3-month Amtrak pass for under $600. Totally worth the money. And by the way, you probably, almost certainly, will not get killed by an Islamist. Yes, absolutely. I agree with Lincoln. Why 3 months? Spend a year. Spend a year in Europe before you even go to college. Go take a backpack and go backtrack through Europe. You can take the trains. You can stay in hostels. There's so much to see in Europe. It's unbelievable. It'd be a unique life experience. And you'll want to keep going back because there's so much more to see. And there's so much fun to be had. And the idea that you would let fear of, I don't know, some Muslim stop you. I mean, don't go to Qatar. Don't go to Iran. Most of you don't go to Saudi Arabia or even to Dubai, I don't think, but you could. A lot of people go to Dubai and they're perfectly safe. But Europe? Give me a break. All right, guys. Thank you to all the super chatters. Really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you to all you listeners. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Subscribe to the show. Like the show before you leave because likes really, 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 really help with the algorithm. Leave a comment. Join the chat in the future. And yeah, super chat and you can do a super something else. There's another super chat from Andrew. I would like to make a point about the psychological evil in the Christian effect on human nervous system. It says to feel pain, fear, and shame in response to selfish acts. Yes. So it basically encourages you to feel shame and guilt from being selfish, which then discourages you from being selfish. And make you live in a constant state of fear and shame and you can never develop self-esteem as a consequence. And it's unbelievably destructive psychologically. Absolutely. Again, we'll talk more about that when we talk about Christianity and its disastrous impact on the West. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's show, what's tomorrow's show time? It'll be later. I have some meeting at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So it'll be at 3 o'clock Eastern time. 3 o'clock Eastern time. And it'll be a little shorter, I think. We won't be able to go over 2 hours. But so I will see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you to all the super chatters. Thank you to all the PayPal and Patreon subscribers. If you're not yet a monthly subscriber, please consider doing so on Patreon, patreon.com. Just search for Yaron Brook Show. Bye, everybody.